The divine arrival, the morning sky above New York City, split open like a wound in reality itself. Dr. Sarah Chen dropped her coffee mug as she stared through her laboratory window at Columbia University. The ceramic shattered on the floor, but she barely noticed. Above the city, massive crystalline structures descended from clouds that hadn't existed moments before. These weren't ships in any conventional sense. They were floating palaces of pure light and crystal, each one the size of Manhattan, drifting downward with impossible grace. The structures pulsed with colors that had no names. Waves of energy rippled across their surfaces like aurora dancing on ice as they settled into positions above major cities worldwide. Every electronic device on Earth fell silent for exactly 37 seconds. Then, as one, they all activated simultaneously, broadcasting the same message in every language ever spoken. Children of the Third World, we have returned. The voice carried weight that pressed against the mind like deep ocean pressure. It spoke without sound, reaching directly into consciousness itself. We are the Eternals, your creators, your architects, your gods. Kneel now, as your ancestors did when first we shaped your clay into flesh. Sarah's hands trembled as she watched. World leaders on every news channel immediately prostrate themselves. The President of the United States knelt on the White House lawn. The Prime Minister of Britain bowed in Downing Street. Across every continent, heads of state and religious leaders alike fell to their knees, proclaiming the arrival of humanity's divine creators. But Sarah Chen wasn't kneeling. She was thinking, as a xenobiologist with 3 doctorate degrees and 20 years studying the possibilities of extraterrestrial life. Something felt wrong about this divine revelation. The Eternals claimed to have created humanity, yet their arrival coincided with no religious prophecy she knew. Their technology, while advanced, followed patterns she recognized from theoretical physics. Most disturbing of all, their knowledge of human history seemed oddly incomplete for beings who claimed to have designed every strand of human DNA. The global response was immediate and total. Within hours, governments worldwide had surrendered their sovereignty to the Eternals. Massive monuments began construction in every major city. Temples of living crystal grew from the earth itself, reshaping skylines overnight. The beings who emerged from the celestial palaces were tall, luminous, creatures with features that seemed to shift and change like reflections in water. They spoke in voices like singing crystals and moved with fluid grace that suggested they existed partially outside normal space-time. High, Eternal Zephyr, their apparent leader, addressed the world from the newly formed crystal throne atop Mount Rushmore. The mountain itself had been transformed, the presidential faces replaced by flowing patterns of light and stone that hurt to look at directly. His words reached every mind on earth simultaneously. For too long you have stumbled in darkness, forgetting your origins. We shaped you from cosmic dust and stellar fire. We guided your evolution from primitive beasts to thinking beings. Every great leap in your development came from our subtle touch. Your art, your science, your capacity for love and wonder. All gifts from us, your eternal fathers. The world listened with religious fervor. Archaeological teams rushed to reinterpret ancient sites as evidence of eternal intervention. Scientists abandoned their research to study the holy technologies granted by their divine creators. Religions reformed overnight to incorporate the truth of the Eternal's cosmic parentage. But in her laboratory at Columbia, Sarah Chen was pulling up genetic databases and evolutionary records. Something nagged at her scientific mind. If the had created humanity, the evidence should be everywhere in the genetic code. Divine fingerprints should be obvious in the archaeological record. Yet the more she looked, the more convinced she became that human evolution followed natural patterns with no divine intervention required. Her computer chimed with an encrypted message from an old colleague. Captain Marcus Torres had served 3 tours in special operations before retiring to teach military history. His message was brief. Meeting tonight, Riverside Park. Come alone, bring your findings. Sarah arrived at the park after midnight to find Marcus waiting with another figure she recognized, Kai Nakamura, the brilliant engineer who'd designed the Mars colony life support systems. His expression was grim as he gestured to a small device. In his hands, "This is a scanner I built from salvaged electronics," Kai whispered. "I've been analyzing the energy patterns from their ships. Sarah, these aren't gods. They're not even that advanced compared to what we could build if we tried. Their technology is impressive, but it follows known physical laws. They're using sophisticated illusions and psychic manipulation to appear divine." Marcus nodded grimly. "I've been reviewing historical accounts of their supposed interventions. Every divine gift they claim to have given humanity correlates with natural technological development. They're taking credit for our achievements." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. "I've been analyzing their claims about creating us. The genetic evidence doesn't support it. Human DNA shows clear evolutionary development with no artificial tampering. We evolved naturally on Earth. They didn't create us at all." The 3 stood in silence, processing the implications. Humanity had surrendered to beings who weren't gods, weren't creators, weren't even significantly more advanced than humans. Could be. They were elaborate fraudsters on a cosmic scale, and somehow Sarah's small group might be the only people on Earth who knew the truth. "What do we do?" Kai asked, his voice barely audible. Marcus's expression hardened. "We do what humans have always done when faced with tyrants claiming divine right. We resist, we fight, and we show them exactly what the species they tried to fool is capable of." Over the following weeks, the 3 began building a network of resistance. They reached out carefully to scientists, military personnel, and free thinkers who might be willing to question the divine narrative. The response was smaller than they'd hoped, but more determined than they'd dared expect. Dr. Elena Buscus, a physicist from CERN, Colonel James Wright, who'd served in the Space Force, Professor Lu Wei, a historian who specialized in analyzing false historical narratives. Each new member of their growing underground brought skills and resources. They established secure communication networks using quantum encryption that even the Eternals couldn't penetrate. Hidden laboratories were set up in abandoned subway tunnels and forgotten military bunkers. Most importantly, they began stealing eternal technology. The beings who called themselves gods had grown complacent in their assumed divinity. Their devices were often left unguarded, protected only by the assumption that no human would dare steal from their creators. But Sarah's team weren't believers. They were scientists, soldiers, and engineers who saw tools to be studied and understood. Kai's analysis of the stolen technology revealed the truth Sarah had suspected. The Eternals were biologically similar to humans, just from a different evolutionary path. Their ships used principles that human science already understood but hadn't yet implemented. Their psychic abilities came from technological implants, not divine power. Most telling of all, their historical records, when decoded, showed They were refugees from a dying star system, looking for a new world to rule. "They're not gods," Sarah told the assembled resistance cell leaders via encrypted hologram. "They're not our creators. They're conquerors who chose deception over direct warfare. They made one critical mistake, though. They underestimated us." The evidence was compiled into a comprehensive report. Video analysis showing inconsistencies in eternal claims. Genetic proof that humans evolved naturally. Historical documentation proving human achievements were genuinely human. Most damning of all, decoded eternal communications revealing their true nature as displaced refugees seeking easy conquest. But having the truth and spreading it were different challenges entirely. The Eternals had convinced the world to worship them. Governments had surrendered. The infrastructure of human civilization now served the false gods. Broadcasting the truth would require penetrating systems controlled by beings who could manipulate minds and reshape matter. That's when Kai presented his masterpiece. Using stolen eternal technology combined with human engineering principles, he'd built something that aliens hadn't expected. A hybrid system that could interface with their networks while remaining undetectable. It was broadcasting equipment, designed specifically to penetrate eternal information control. "We get one shot at this," Marcus warned as they prepared for the transmission. "Once we broadcast the truth, they'll know we exist. They'll come for us with everything they have." Sarah looked around at the faces of her team. Scientists who'd abandoned comfortable careers to seek truth. Soldiers who'd chosen conscience over orders. Engineers who'd risked everything to build tools of liberation. They were tired, scared, and facing impossible odds against beings the world believed were gods. But they were also human, and that, Sarah realized, might be the most powerful thing in the galaxy. The human uprising, the broadcast, began at exactly midnight. Greenwich Mean Time. Sarah Chen stood before Kai's improvised transmission array, her hands steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to do. Around her, the resistance team monitored eternal communication channels, ready to track the inevitable response. "People of Earth," Sarah began, her voice carrying across every screen, every speaker, every communication device on the planet. The Eternal's own network was carrying her signal, turned against them by human ingenuity. "My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, and I have something to tell you about your gods." The evidence unfolded systematically. Genetic analysis proving natural human evolution. Archaeological data showing organic technological development. Most damning of all, decoded eternal records revealing their true nature as desperate refugees who'd chosen deception over honest cooperation. "They are not our creators," Sarah's voice echoed across 7 continents. "They are not gods. They are beings like us, with advanced technology but no divine right to rule. They saw our world and chose to conquer it through lies rather than force. But they made one critical error. They forgot that the same curiosity and intelligence they tried to exploit would eventually expose their deception." On the crystal throne atop Mount Rushmore, High Eternal Zephyr felt something he hadn't experienced in millennia. Fear, not the simple concern of tactical setbacks, but existential terror at watching his carefully constructed illusion crumble. In real time, around him, his council members flickered with distress patterns, their luminous forms wavering as psychic feedback from 7 billion awakening minds crashed over them. "Silence the transmission," Zephyr commanded, but the hybrid technology was beyond their ability to suppress. Kai had built it specifically to resist eternal interference, using their own principles against them. Across Earth, the response was immediate and dramatic. In New York City, crowds gathered around the Crystal Temple, no longer bowing but demanding answers. In London, the Prime Minister stood slowly, confusion and then anger replacing blind devotion. Military commanders worldwide looked at their surrendered weapons and remembered their oaths to defend humanity, not serve false gods. Dr. Elena Vasquez, broadcasting from CERN, added her analysis of eternal physics. Their technology violates no natural laws. Everything they do, we can learn to do. They're not magic. They're not divine. They're just several centuries ahead of us technologically, and that gap can be closed. Colonel James Wright, speaking from a hidden military bunker, addressed the surrendered armed forces. Soldiers, you swore oaths to protect your nations and your species. Those oaths didn't end when aliens claiming godhood told you to kneel. It's time to remember who you are and what you stand for. The Eternal's response was swift and merciless. Energy beams lanced down from their crystal ships, targeting known resistance sites. But Marcus had anticipated this. The transmission locations were decoys, hardened bunkers designed to absorb the attacks, while the real broadcast teams operated from mobile units. More importantly, the attacks themselves proved Sarah's point. Gods wouldn't need to silence criticism with violence. Divine beings wouldn't fear human questions. The very act of attacking their own children revealed the Eternals as the fraudulent tyrants they'd always been. Kai's voice joined the broadcast as he unveiled his second revelation: weapons and technology built from stolen Eternal designs. They gave us the tools of our own liberation, he announced. Every device they left unguarded, every ship they considered beyond our understanding, we studied and improved. Human engineering combined with their technology has created something neither of us had alone. The first human ship rose from hidden construction sites across the globe. Unlike the crystalline elegance of Eternal vessels, these were utilitarian masterpieces, angular, efficient, and built for one purpose. They were humanity's answer to false gods, engineered with the same determination that had taken humans from caves to space stations. Commander Lisa Rodriguez piloted the lead ship, the Prometheus, as it climbed through Earth's atmosphere. Behind her flew dozens of similar vessels, each one crewed by humans who'd spent months training in secret. They weren't as graceful as Eternal ships, but they were faster, more maneuverable, and, most importantly, they were built by people who understood that freedom was worth any price. The space battle that followed lasted only minutes, but it changed the course of galactic history. The Eternals, accustomed to ruling through fear and illusion, were unprepared for direct confrontation. Their ships were designed for intimidation, not warfare. Human vessels, built by a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of conflict, tore through Eternal formations with tactical precision. High Eternal Zephyr found himself facing something he'd never encountered: genuine resistance from beings he'd considered inferior. His ship, the Celestial Crown, shuddered under human weapons fire. The crystal hull that had seemed invulnerable cracked under sustained bombardment from projectiles that shouldn't have been able to penetrate divine armor. How he transmitted to his council, his mental voice tinged with desperate confusion. They're primitives, barely evolved apes. How are they doing this? The answer came not from his advisors, but from an intercepted human communication. Marcus Torres, coordinating the battle from Earth, spoke with the calm professionalism of a species born to war. Because we're not primitives, and we never were, we're humans. We adapt, we overcome, and we never, ever surrender to tyrants, no matter what they call themselves. The tide of battle turned decisively when Kai's ultimate weapon came online. He'd discovered that eternal technology relied heavily on quantum entanglement networks that could be disrupted by specific frequencies. The disruption array, built into satellites that had been disguising themselves as space debris, activated simultaneously around the globe. Every eternal ship suddenly found its systems failing. Their weapons couldn't target properly, their shields flickered and died. Their navigation systems couldn't distinguish up from down. The false gods, stripped of their technological advantages, faced human ships with nothing but their own desperate courage. It wasn't enough. It had never been enough. The surrender came not as a formal declaration, but as a panicked retreat. Eternal ships fled Earth's gravity well in disorder, their crystal hulls scarred by human weapons, their crews broken by the realization that their divine masquerade was over forever. Sarah Chen stood in the ruins of the crystal throne, which had collapsed when the Eternal's power source was disrupted. Around her, humans were dismantling the alien temples and monuments, reclaiming their cities and their dignity. The false gods were gone, but their legacy remained in the form of advanced technology, freely shared, and the knowledge that humanity could face any challenge. What happens now? A reporter asked as global communication networks buzzed with questions about the future. Sarah looked up at the sky where human ships were establishing orbital patrols, ensuring the Eternals would never return to threaten Earth again. Now we do what humans have always done. We explore, we learn, we grow, and we remember that no one has the right to rule us except ourselves. Across the galaxy, the news of humanity's victory spread through interstellar communication. Networks, other species who had encountered the Eternals, listened in amazement to the story of the small blue world that had seen through divine deception and chosen freedom over comfortable slavery. The humans of Earth had done more than defeat false gods. They had proven that intelligence, courage, and the refusal to surrender could overcome any oppression. They had shown the galaxy that some species were too proud to kneel, too curious to be deceived, and too stubborn to accept defeat. The Eternals would find other worlds, other civilizations, to deceive with their claims of divinity. But they would never forget the small blue planet where their illusion of godhood died forever, shattered by beings who believed that truth was worth fighting for, no matter the cost. Humanity had faced gods and found them wanting. In doing so, they had discovered something far more valuable than divine favor. They had discovered themselves.